Kushner cannot serve in the White House due to nepotism rules. And Elaine, we have learned that Steve Bannon, hard-right conservative and campaign CEO for Trump, is under consideration for White House Chief of Staff. Should he get that appointment, it would send a distinctly anti-establishment signal throughout Washington in a way that the other person vying for that post, RNC Chairman Reince Priebus, would not.
Interesting. So, Major, what is the latest on other names the transition team is considering for top posts?
Lots of names are bouncing around, but through my reporting, I've confirmed that Texas Congressman, Republican Jeb Hensarling, is under serious consideration as Treasury Secretary. A little bit of background about Hensarling and why he might actually land that post. First of all, he is one of Mike Pence's closest personal friends in Congress, Mike Pence being the vice president-elect. Also, Hensarling has carved out an expertise on financial regulatory policy. As chairman of the Financial Services Committee, he has written lengthy treatises on what he considers to be the inherent flaws of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Regulation Act. All of that literature is well known to conservatives who care about that topic and would be a foundation for supporting Hensarling if Trump were to go in that direction. And one last note about Hensarling, Elaine. He's so curious about economic policy, he once read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations book in the original Old English. Why? So he wouldn't miss a thing.
Wow.
Those are his words, yes.
That is commitment.
Let me give you a couple of other names. For National Security Advisor, the key coordinating position on national security, defense, and State Department issues within any White House. John Bolton, the Bush administration ambassador to the United Nations, under consideration, but the leading candidate, I am told, is retired Army General and former Defense Intelligence Agency leader Michael Flynn, who was on the campaign trail extensively for Trump and one of his earliest and most vocal advocates from the United States military, though he was and still is retired. And for Veterans Administration, an issue that Trump has identified heavily throughout the campaign, Jeff Miller from Florida, congressman, head of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and Mike McCall, who is head of the Homeland Security Committee in Congress from Texas as Homeland Security Secretary. Those are names bouncing around. There are many others, but those are the most prominent ones that come to mind.
It'll be interesting to see who exactly is from within the establishment and who is not. On another topic here, Major, the first family did not do an arrival photo op at the White House as the Bush family did when the Obamas first visited the White House in 2008. Is there anything to read into that?
There might be some generalized discomfort between this White House, President Obama, and Michelle Obama, the First Lady, and that kind of ceremonial, photographic, symbolic embrace, which was accorded by the Bush family to the Obama family when they arrived. And yet the White House, and I think this is a fair point that it makes, and as someone who has routinely and aggressively advocated for access here at the White House, I take their point. They said you've always prioritized seeing the newsmakers together and hearing them speak about what they've just done, which did not happen when President George W. Bush invited President-elect Obama here. They just had the ceremonial photographs and no access to the newsmakers. Today we had access. We heard from President Obama and we heard from President-elect Trump. And I would, as Josh Earnest said from the podium today, prioritize that over and above all sorts of symbolic photographs. So the White House did that in accordance with what we've always told them. But I do think it's worth at least wondering if the first family was less than perfectly comfortable with the kind of physical, ceremonial embrace type photographs that occurred here 8 years ago on this day when the first family, the Bush first family, welcomed the incoming President-elect Obama and his wife, Michelle.
Major, I want to put up this tweet from Edward Isaac Dover. He's the print reporter assigned to cover President-elect Trump, saying, "Today, I was the pool reporter for the president-elect. The total information I received from the transition was 2 emails, 6 words total. Trump broke tradition in the campaign by not having a protective press pool follow him. Is it possible he could break the same tradition in the White House?"
I have very deep fears he will try to. The Trump hostility to the press is real. It is not a campaign stunt. And today's example of that is something that should send shockwaves through every newsroom in America and cause genuine concern for all 5 networks and every journalistic institution in this city, that invests time and effort and resources in a protective presidential pool. The protective pool is a group of reporters assigned to see and be near, in this case, the president-elect, as they are now near and see and chronicle every movement of the president of the United States. This has been in place since the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So the press, as the eyes and ears of the country at large, has proximity to the president or the president-elect in almost every available circumstance. Today, that protective pool, that set of reporters, was left behind in New York when President-elect Trump flew to Washington, and then upon its arrival in Washington, too late to cover anything, was left behind when President-elect Trump flew back to New York. So the protective pool was only protective in one sense. It was protected from the president-elect, kept at arm's length. Exactly the opposite of its organizing principle and purpose. That is an early signal to every journalist that seeks to cover this White House about President-elect Trump's attitude about their daily activities and what he considers their importance to be. And if anyone thinks he's kidding about this, think again.
Major, before we let you go, I want to ask and follow up on that point that you just made. Do you think there is any avenue to pursue this with Vice President-elect Pence? Because as you well know, he has been an advocate of press access, and I believe he was the one, if I remember correctly, Major, who, when the press credentials of some reporters were revoked, it was then Governor Pence's guidance that changed that situation.
It did. And memorably, at least to me, when the campaign was over the last night, Monday night, Governor Pence went out of his way to thank those traveling reporters for the hard hours and work that they put in, chronicling everything he did on the campaign trail, saying, I know what you do, I know how hard it is, and I know how important it is. Meanwhile, I was with Donald Trump being excoriated every single rally for being a dishonest liar because I work for a news organization. There is great tension between these two points of view about the American media. They exist within this now administration-to-be. Trump sets his own tone on most things and only takes Mike Pence's advice when he seeks it. I hope he seeks it on this question.
All right. Major Garrett, thank you so much.